So I'm now going to move on, Matt, to my talk, please. So what are the top 25%? What are the top 25% doing? Good. Okay, so I'm just going to run through. So there is a handout on the numbers at the back somewhere, so of the numbers I'm going to use. I'm just going to briefly go through what the 25%, top 25% doing, so in terms of numbers. So I think the key thing to start off with is something I've been telling clients for a long time. You're not just farmers, you are rural business people. Okay, so and that's a mindset, I think, and I have clients now saying that only a certain percentage of our income comes from arable farming. We have other things that we're doing. So I think that's one of the things that we need to change is that mindset. So, and I think the next slide is really important. Some of you might relate to this. So I think the other key thing that we find in successful farming businesses is family harmony. Okay, and you've heard me talk about dysfunctional families in the past, and I've been doing quite a few DB talks, monitor farm talks recently, and I've been asking people to put up their hands if they're within a dysfunctional family, and quite a few people put their hands up. I'm not going to ask you to put your hands up, but that's a key point. So if you've got good communication and family harmony in the business, it really helps to be successful. So I think the other key point here as well is machinery management. We have scrutiny on the variable costs, and we've got two people from elite farmers here, and Johnny was just talking now, who's an agronomist. So that the scrutiny, Johnny, that you've been applying in the past to variable costs, and all farmers apply to variable costs, that scrutiny is not always in machinery, and we have got machinery prices of value now. Machinery value up to £360 an acre on the average farm, which is huge. Then that equals depreciation. So depreciation is high, which is not, obviously the depreciation is only a drop in that value, but there's a lot of capital tied up in machinery. Family harmony and machinery management, which is not on there, but I think that's quite important. So the next slide shows the numbers. So these numbers are in the handout at the back. So they're in pounds per acre, not hectare. Okay. So after Brexit, obviously we're back to acres. So we got gross margin, not Gary Markham at the top. Gross margin, top, average, and bottom. So arable net margin, environmental income. Okay, so the top 25% is the top. We do have a top 10% as well. And there are some of you in the room now in the top 10%. And quite a few in the room in the top 25%. The bottom 25% people don't normally turn out to meetings, so because that's a story in itself, I suppose. Environmental income is interesting there. Rental income, look at that. So, which is what I said, rural businesses as opposed to arable farming. So 108, 79, 46, and so rural profit. So that's the rural profit and not the arable profit coming in there, 56430. So one of the key things, look at the variation. The variation there is huge, and that's something that's always been in our figures, and we have it in the Groundswell group figures, John and Harriet as well, don't we? Huge variation in that group. And in that group, there's a WhatsApp group that you mentioned, Harriet, in the Groundswell group. John, and they're helping each other. There's about 20 farmers in that WhatsApp group. Some of them are quite hilarious, but by what's said, but they are helping each other and etc. And which is really interesting to see. So many farms are just on their own and have their own advisors. So rural profit, net income, net farm income down there at the bottom. We're starting to get some brackets. So one point here, this is the 22 harvest, okay, and the 22 harvest is pretty damn good. So that's what we're looking at. But look at the very bottom line, excluding diversification and BPS, which is disappearing. Look at that, average 5. So those figures are actually extrapolated from the handout. That's up there. So What are the top 25% doing? You can see there some of them. For the rental income is key, not so much environmental income. Now, but what is frightening here is that if we look at the next slide, so those bottom line figures have to fund drawings, capital on loans, capital on the hire purchase, reinvestment, and as I said, that's the 22 harvest. So machinery value, as I said, is a key point. I mentioned a couple of points at the very early on. Treat it as a rural business and family harmony. Invest time in the family. So £360 an acre on average tied up in value on the average farm. And I think that's something that quite a few farmers can do something about. So I believe that the answer is collaboration and sharing costs. And we've seen quite a few successful, but I've got to say this as well, but Harriet, or perhaps regenerative agriculture, because the machinery values per acre in the Groundswell group are around about £290 per acre as opposed to 360. So Harriet, you went down to gross margin. So below that is the machinery costs. And the capital tied up in machinery, etc., is a key thing added, Julie, to below that line again. So it's a bit wider picture than Harriet showed there. So so this is an example. This is a slide I've had of these two rugby balls. You've seen these before, I'm sure. Many people have seen these. I've been showing this slide for about 5 or 6 years, normally during when the Six Nations are on, which is good. So basically, this is a structure that works really, really well, and we've got some of these structures been going for about 20 years, where the £360 an acre, where all the machinery is pooled in the bottom then, an LLP, not a company, is around about £280 an acre. So you can see the difference. And the key point here is that word scrutiny. Okay, so you can actually, you've got all the machinery down there, and we've got a couple of people in. So Andrew Rampley, you're here somewhere, I guess there. So you're in a machinery syndicate, and I have asked you. You know you're going to be picked on. So you've been running a machinery syndicate for many years. Just in a couple of words, how does it work for you? How has it worked for you?
Really useful.
Yeah.
Having partners who aren't necessarily managing stuff day to day, but bring up the skills and things for the business as well. And just the discipline of having quarterly meetings and knowing that we're going to sit down with you at the end of the year and you're going to benchmark us. Helps as well.
Good. Yeah. And John Latham, how old is AWT?
Can you hear me? Yeah. AWT was set up in 2020. No, 2000.
Year 2000.
And I joined in 2002.
Yeah, so that your syndicate is 24 years old.
24 years old.
Yeah.
And
still going.
Still going very well.
Yeah.
The difference, Gary, I agree exactly what Andrew says. We can see our costs. It's very apparent what they are. But we also exercise a share farming agreement behind that as well. So
which is that top rugby ball.
Top rugby ball, yes, and that keeps everybody aligned. It stops all the arguments.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, you're sharing everything. So yeah, so I think that that proves that works, and I'm very, very keen on that sort of structure, and that's the talks I've been giving to HDB. So just to finish off, then the top 25% will. And have we got Tom Arthur here as well? I think so. Well, we did have, and he hasn't. Yeah. Oh, there you are, Tom. Yeah. So Will first. Top 25%, not machinery syndicates, but in general, going back to the family harmony point or something similar.
Well, if I knew the answer to what the 25%.
This is Tom Arthur, not Will, by the way. Yes, sorry, Tom.
To what the 25%. I mean, there's no silver bullet, but I would say from my perspective is that it's keeping a close eye on the costs you can control, and machinery being probably the top one. But taking a real focus on that element, the cost that you can control from year to year, first and foremost, before you worry about the variation in input costs and
Yeah,
costs.
sure. And I think, and it's making those, the key point is making those machinery costs transparent. Because quite often in a set of accounts, they're just hidden. You can't tell, you can't, they're just hidden in fixed costs quite often. So because they're in everything else is in there as well. By putting them down there, you can actually scrutinise them. Will Tongue, over to you, please. So these are two eminent farm advisors in the room, very luckily.
I think you've alluded to a lot of the points already, Gary, but
Okay.
as far as I see, the top 25% are just being excellent managers in various different ways. So good technical managers and taking advice where they need to achieve that. Good managers of people, whether that's their staff and motivating staff and being efficient on the ground, or whether it's managing the family well, collaborating, not falling out with each other. And probably an extra point is good managers of themselves. So realising what their own personal strengths and weaknesses are, and where necessary, going off and investing in personal development, in knowledge transfer. Coming to meetings like this, you said the bottom 25% don't attend, so that shows you. And recognising that, needing to experiment with new things and seek new information and ideas and technology.
Yeah, good. Thanks, Will. Yeah, so I hope that's given you some ideas what the top 25% doing. All those numbers are in the handout. Any questions before we move on what I've showed you? Yeah, Ian. You always have the killer question from Ian Watson. Don't give him the mic.
Regenerative farming covers a lot of different things. Of your top 25% or your top 10%, how many of those are regenerative farmers?
Yeah, thank you, Ian. So I have got a list of them, and so I have got a list of them actually here. Yeah, and the answer is none. Yeah. So, but the point, I think the key point is that you saw the top 25 there is not, they're not just farming, it's their businesses. And it's an attitude of mind, as I said at the very beginning. It's not about, they could be regenerative farmers, but have a load of rental income because they're running rural businesses. Okay, so it's a bit wider than the point you're making, I think, because yeah, Ian always asks me the killer question, as I said. So, yeah, well, you're going to tell us in a minute. Okay, well, you're going to tell us you're not. Okay, but I'll let you do that and do that in a minute. Okay, so yeah, Ian, yeah, none of them are there, but I think that's not the point. They are up there because they're doing other things as well as arable farming. I think to bounce it back at you. Yeah, Mr. Parrish.
Thank you, Gary. It's not really a question, it's more of a statement that was announced last week at the NFU conference by the Prime Minister, who's got our back.
Yeah.
We're not doing it for the money, he's basically saying, we're doing it for the love and a way of life. That doesn't really help support from government going forward, does it? We're not doing it
at all, no.
For passion, we're doing it as a business, as you're explaining to us.
Yeah, sure. And what came out of Wales in the last 2 days is you cannot be green if you're in the red. Which counters that, doesn't it? You can't be green if you're in, so and I think one of the things I say, Harriet, is that, and Ian, if you're moving to a regen system, it's a lot of it's in here as well, and it's not for the faint-hearted, and you've got to jump off the moving wheel you're on, the hamster wheel you're in at the moment without breaking your leg. And so it's a very fine line. So it's a very it's a gradual thing, I think, to move across. Okay, so Susie's got one more question. Then we're moving to Ian.
Yeah, just on you mentioned about the crop sharing aspect of the joint venture approach.
Sure. Yeah, share farming. Yeah.
Share farming. Sorry. So how does the the cropping aspect of that and sharing the returns works. I think that might be something that some people would have questions
Cropping
about.
share farming, that one, Susie, yeah. Is that top rugby ball? Yes. Yeah, okay. So, so basically it's, so the bottom one is machinery, an LLP where all the machinery is pooled, okay, cost sharing. And so the problem you have is that you've got one combine or one drill and you've got 4 farmers up there who are crying out for it, and and they fall out. So basically you have a share farming agreement. So therefore the farmer on the left at 20% of 20%, putting 20% of land into the whole lot, all those add up to 100, I hope. 20%, so he owns 20% of all the crops. So it doesn't matter where you're drilling, it doesn't matter where the combine is. And that's what John Latham has been doing for 20 years, and it works really well. And they've never fallen out. Okay, so it is, and it actually is a share, as Julie advocates of a share farming, it's a share farming agreement which is recognised by HMRC, etc., etc. Yeah, and you've basically got them, you combine them both, and that to me is the ultimate structure. Yeah, okay.